Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be providing a long-term market analysis update for ADA. We're going to talk about the fact that we've got some follow through after losing the previous level of support right around 41 cents. We'll cover some key weekly moving averages and then some longer term zones of support to watch out for further down from here. We're also going to talk about the daily time frame and some levels on this chart and the ADA Bitcoin ratio. So with this, we're really coming into high time frame support, retesting the lows from back here in May. So I do also want to talk about the implications of the Bitcoin ratio pair and what we could be expecting into the next few months with this altcoin. So if you guys enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Also, by the way, I will leave a link to my Twitter page in the description below. Feel free to go ahead and check that out as well. I am fairly active over there. So first, I do want to start off here on the weekly chart and really just discuss what's happened over the last few months, where we had this very strong level of support right around 41 cents, this being a longer term lower high back in the previous cycle, very key level of resistance to which we had this big rally up into, formed that rejection, and then continued that bearish trend. And we also saw this as resistance on this big bull run up in January of 2021. So that was a level of support for a few months in the summer time frame. We had several retests, and then eventually we did get that breakdown and we flipped that level right into resistance. So if I zoom in here onto the last few months, you can see that quite clearly. The weekly candles held this zone of support, all these weekly closes holding above this level, and then we got that breakdown, flipped it right into resistance, rejected, and now we're starting to roll over and we're starting to form lower lows, and we're seeing a continuation of that bearish trend. And what I want to focus on is the longer term zone of support that we can look to further down from here, where we might expect some demand, might expect some buyers to start to step in. So I'm going to zoom out all the way back here. Going back to the previous market cycle, I think looking at this level right around 17 cents is going to be very key into the next few months. Now, obviously that is much further down from here, but I don't think there's much support in between these two levels, just given how quickly Cardano has moved between these two zones. And I'll give you an example right here in December and January of the bull run. We basically had this move from the 17 cent support level right into that 41 cent zone in about 2 to 3 weeks. And that's 150%. So these very quick and abrupt moves really don't establish many support levels in between. These tend to be quite inefficient, and it tends to be inefficient on the downside as well. So this is going to be the next level to watch out for. This was resistance right here in July of 2018, a big rejection, another lower high that we had back in the previous market cycle. We had that rejection continue down and formed lower lows from there. And we also had this rejection right here in August. Now, this was a little bit less of a rejection, to which we actually had a reclaim back a few months later. But ultimately, this was the level where this big run up from March 2020, those lows in COVID crash, had a pause. We had this big rally up. This was the first real sign of resistance. Cardano came back down, consolidated for a few more weeks, and then eventually it had a big breakout. And again, from that breakout point, Cardano rallied by about 150% in just 2 to 3 weeks, really signifying the importance and the strength of the rally once it eventually got above that level of resistance. So seeing as how it was strong resistance back in the previous sort of consolidation and accumulation zone, I would expect this to be very strong support if we do have some more follow through and we continue this bearish decline, getting back down to that zone. And you can see that we could get there quite quickly, just given the current rate of change of this downtrend. You know, we've been very consistent with these legs down, very consistent with the rejections off these weekly moving averages. And I really wouldn't expect it to be out of the question, out of the cards, for us to get back down to that zone and form a longer term cycle low in this region. Now, ADA certainly doesn't have to come back down to that zone, but I do consider this as a longer term magnet for price, just given how there, again, isn't much support between that 17 cent zone and that 41 cent zone of support that we just lost in the last few weeks. So that's what I'm watching out for on the weekly chart. I'm also going to be looking at the daily chart. Again, that level of support right around the 41 cent mark. That's the zone that we had multiple attempts trying to break below. Ultimately, this was the level that defended on about 4 attempts. You can see those quite clearly. More and more buyers starting to step in, and then eventually we had that breakdown, big flip into resistance, and then we got that rollover. And then we established this mini zone of support over the last few weeks. Again, that has started to break down, and we've lost that, forming lower lows, continuing this bearish decline. So when I zoom out here all the way, there really isn't much support, there really isn't much price action until we get to that 17, 18 cent zone, the consolidation that we had right here in November and December of 2020 before that big rally up. So that's what I'm going to be watching out for, and I especially think that it is a high likelihood that we would see an eventual retest, an attempt to get back up to this level, and then maybe a rejection off of it. So just as an illustration, maybe we have that recovery move back up, and then if we have another rejection, very similar to the last move that we had breaking under the 41 cent level, this would not surprise me at all. And I would expect most likely we will see eventually another lower high coming up to that zone. Whether that happens in the next few weeks or that happens further down the line to form that lower high really is anyone's guess. But I do think that eventually we will get that recovery attempt and see how ADA reacts and responds to this level. So lastly, I do want to talk about the ADA Bitcoin ratio. And this is really sort of pointing and suggesting to the fact that we might have a bounce coming up here back up to that zone because this is at longer term high time frame support. And that is the level right around 1600 satoshis. That is the level that we held that support right here in these May lows. And again, you can see on the longer term time frame, it has historically been a very key level of support and resistance. ADA Bitcoin rejected off this level right here in March and April of 2019. Big move up to this level, and then that was a longer term lower high. And then we also had this rejection in July and August of 2020. So we have come back down to that level. I would expect this to be a very strong level of support where we might see some buyers and demand starting to step in on the ADA Bitcoin ratio. And this would just mean that ADA is starting to defend its relative performance with respect to Bitcoin, not necessarily that the USD pair has to move up or down. So that's what I'm going to be watching out for into next few weeks and months with Cardano. I hope you guys did enjoy the content and the analysis. By the way, make sure to check out my Twitter page. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. As always, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.